Welcome to the cold, hard truth on sports.
I apologize in advance if I am out of line here.
Brace yourselves, boys. We're going in.
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you are doing?
I can't believe you.
I'm not reading, I'm just looking at the picture. Welcome to the cold, hard truth on sports.
Welcome to another great week here of the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. I am your host, Matthew Long. Big show. A lot to talk about tonight. The Cleveland Browns are going to be adding a new head coach who will be, we don't know. Week 8 of the NFL season, the Browns decide, after this terrible run with Lewis, we're going to go ahead and we're going to fire him. It's are the Browns terrible? Are they terrible? Are they terrible as a franchise at making decisions to where it makes you wonder, can they be left to make decisions like this? I said Lewis, sorry, Marvin Lewis. You still have a job in Cincy, the other Cleveland team, and Hugh Jackson. I was going to get into Cincy later in the show, but Hugh Jackson from the Cleveland Browns was fired today, and the Browns are going to be heading up this search. And they name Greg Williams head coach, interim head coach. He's known most for being his offensive coordinator. Hasn't done a lot with quarterbacks. It's not one of these quarterback whisperers, but Greg Williams does have a fair amount of experience in the NFL. If the name sounds familiar, and you're like, why does it sound so familiar? He was kicked out of football. He was kicked out of football. He was the defensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints when they won Super Bowl. Was it 20-something or 34, something like that. And he was fired. He's primarily in his coaching career, it's pretty much all been the defensive side. Now, clearly, as a head coach, you have a little input on both sides of the ball. However, it's minimized greatly versus being a coordinator or even a quarterback coach. So what he's coached primarily in his time in the league, and this goes all the way back to the Houston Oilers, he's been he was a defensive assistant, special teams coach, linebackers. Then was promoted to defensive coordinator. Then he was a head coach with the Bills, defensive coordinator, assistant head coach with the Redskins. He was defensive coordinator with Jacksonville, defensive coordinator with the Saints. He went over after that. He was with the Rams for a year as defensive coordinator. The Titans he spent a year in 2013 with as the senior assistant defensive coach. And when they went to L.A. till 2016, he was the defensive coordinator for the Rams. And then last season, he took the job with the Browns as defensive coordinator, where he currently is as an interim head coach. So clearly, he's in this position because he has the most experience as head coach. He's been a head coach in the NFL and an assistant head coach a number of times. However, when we're talking about why did they make this change, I'll talk about a little why he doesn't seem to be the best fit. Also, in the NFL, the Buccaneers have made a move at quarterback, a change at quarterback, a change back to Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy that had the hot hand at the beginning of the season. He came in when Jameis was suspended. He balled out. He had this offense moving. He's still the only quarterback in their system in these 2 years since they've had Deshaun Jackson that have been able to get him incorporated into the game while still getting Mike Evans the ball. Godwin and Humphreys still, O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate, they all four contribute in or kind of sprinkled in here and there. But Deshaun Jackson with Fitzpatrick is just, the ball gets there. It's not overthrown. It's not underthrown. Fitzpatrick is guiding the ball in the offense and gives the team energy. He's leading the team in a way that they need. Jameis's problems on the field and off the field are making it very tough right now for the Buccaneers to keep him around. And I'll explain a little bit more of that as we get into the show. Tonight, we will unveil the first college football playoff poll. Committee poll will be this evening. What's going on with my sound here? Let's try to get that figured out. Anyways. Okay. Oh no, my mic sounds a little different tonight. Like it has air in it. Can you guys check that back there? Yeah, just check that. Anyways, we'll keep moving the show forward. If you have questions or want to call into the show, 347-237-5539. 347-237-5539. I don't have any guests scheduled tonight. Kevin Kress may join us a little later. A couple of the guys from Take This L show on Wednesdays may show up too. But I'm pretty much just driving this bus tonight. So if you want to call in, 347-237-5539, or you can hit the show up. I see messages here. Direct message. The show, the handle is the CHT on sports, pretty much everywhere on social media, or you can hit me up directly at Matt Long Sports. I got my cell phone here. So, will we get? Yeah. Yes, the overtime segment tonight, the whole hour, will be on Facebook Live. Absolutely. So, if you want to tune in there, be sure. I know a lot of you listening on Blog Talk Radio every week. Very much appreciate you guys tuning in on Blog Talk Radio. We've been with Blog Talk Radio from the beginning, but We do have a new partner, a new broadcasting format. Well, it's not new. We've had it for a year or so. But it's the one that people really actually preferred. And I want to make sure we're getting more people over there. We have a special deal worked out with them to improve our syndication and moving into iHeartRadio and whatnot. So be sure wherever you get your apps, App Store, App Play Store, Apple Cart, wherever you go, okay? Download the Spreaker app. Spreaker, Spreaker. Download the Spreaker app, and you can listen to the full 3 hours of the show or the podcasted version live. All 3 hours, all right? Either way, you can listen to it over there. Be sure to follow the show. That's very key. Follow the show over there. Thank you for liking, but we need you to follow the show over there, okay? That helps with some of the other syndications and stuff that we do as well. We appreciate wherever you follow us, but specifically we want you to follow us there because it's helping out with us being able to broadcast and branch out our horizon, if you will. So, all right. You know, I might just need to buy a new mic. I don't know. Christmas is coming, right? My kids remind me. You know you're getting close to Christmas when you start seeing the ads come in and there's toys. And my kids, especially my son, does exactly what I did when I was a kid. I was like, I want one of those. I want one of those. I want one of those. My grandma used to entertain it because it'd keep me busy. She'd just give me ads, and I'd go back over them 3 or 4 or 5 times, and I'd circle the ones I liked. And I actually used to collect. I used to collect Christmas ornaments, Hallmark ornaments. So you'll see as we get closer to Christmas. If you watch the Facebook video portion of the show, the overtime segment, you'll see a little Christmas tree up in the corner and some ornaments and stuff on there. I have some, like Muhammad Ali and Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Kobe Bryant, Shaq. Some ornaments, some Hallmark ornaments that collected over the years that I will display up. When we get into Christmas time. But you get to start getting the ads in with kids' toys and whatnot. You're pretty safe at saying, I think it is it's getting into that Christmas season. So and then I was taking a listen to some of the audio. Do we have it to play? No, we're not playing audio. Okay, that's fine. We don't have to play the audio. Let's take a look at some of the audio that we had, and LeBron. In his last game, he was talking about uh-oh.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio.
All right.
Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key.
All right.
To start your show now, press 1.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
Swell. All right. Thanks, Blog Talk Radio, for hanging in there. We ran into a brief technical difficulty, so apologize for that. we should be good moving forward. Don't know what happened there. That happens sometimes. All right. LeBron James was in an interview in the last game, post-game interview. They were talking a little bit about what's going on with the Lakers and the direction they see the Lakers going. And simply put, showing some understandable frustration that he's not pleased with the continued mistakes. And when I say continued mistakes, I don't mean that they continue to make mistakes, that they continue to make the same mistakes. I don't think that there's any problem with feeling that this Laker team at 2-5 could end up being a playoff team. I don't this season. However, there obviously some things have to change, and they have to make some significant improvements. But they're losing games like at Minnesota. They lose by 4. They lose by 4 at San Antonio. They win at home to the Nuggets, and they beat the Suns. They beat the Suns pretty handily in Phoenix. The previous game against the Spurs, they lose at home by 1. They lose to the Rockets in overtime, by 9 points? If not even that. Yeah, 9 points. And again, Portland in Portland, they lost to them by 9. 9 points in the NBA is not a huge margin. But the schedule isn't going to get any easier. They have the Mavericks tomorrow night on Halloween night at 10:30. The big difference for LeBron this season will be the schedule. You got Dallas at home, back in Portland, Toronto at home. Then you got the Timberwolves at home, Sacramento, Atlanta at home, Portland at home. You go to Orlando, to Miami, to Cleveland, back home to play Utah. Back home, you're playing Orlando. Then you go to Denver, home against the Pacers, home against Memphis. Then you have Miami at home. Then you go to Houston, Charlotte. So from December 13th through the 18th, they're on the road. And again, this is how it goes. Houston, Charlotte, Washington, Brooklyn. They're back home on the 21st against the Pelicans. And 2 nights later, they have the Grizzlies. And then on Christmas Day, which is when the NBA starts for a lot of people, they have the Warriors at home, 8 p.m. primetime game. That game, I guarantee I'm watching. And I think a lot of people will. And not just because it's LeBron versus and his new team against Golden State, but Golden State seems to... There's something going on there. I'll talk a little bit later in the show. By the way, if you want tickets for that, there are a little over 1,600 tickets left, as low as $290, which is basically $70 in the rest of the world's terms. Yeah, so $290, and Yeah. I don't get. I get wanting to go to the game, but I don't get those seats that are just so high, like so far up there. As a fan, I mean, I get you. You take a kid to a game, but who buys the season tickets in the nosebleed? Do the NBA teams? Can you move down? Can you just buy cheaper seats and move down? I've never been up that high at the NBA game. No, not like seats wise. Press box area wise, yeah. But anyways, it's just that night after night. I mean, you have Portland, Utah, the Clippers, the Warriors. Like this is the last. This is March and April for them. They close out the season. Milwaukee at home, to Phoenix, at home against the Clippers, Nuggets, and Celtics. Then they head to Chicago, Toronto, Detroit, New York, and Milwaukee. That's right. They leave March 12th. From March 12th to March 19th, they play 5 games in 5 different cities. Then they come back home on the 22nd. They play Brooklyn. They have Brooklyn, Sacramento, and Washington. They go to Utah, back home against Charlotte, to New Orleans, to Oklahoma City, back home against Golden State, at home. Well, at the Clippers is the same stadium. Yeah. But then at home against Utah and Portland to end the season. I mean, I can look through here and see where they can pick up some wins, against Atlanta, against Sacramento, against, against Orlando, against Denver, Dallas, Phoenix. I mean, there's wins to be had here. If people suspected that they would be a 500 team, I think that's a very fair look at it. As of right now, they're 4.5 games out. 2.5 games out of the season ended today. Again, 7 games in. This isn't ideally where you look at this, but 7 games in. At 7 games in, everybody's in it. Even Phoenix at 1-5. Houston's at 1-4. Oklahoma City is at 1-4. So you're telling me the team that was in the Western Conference Finals and the Rockets at 1-4, they're out of it? You mean OKC, who's been in the playoffs the last several years with or without Durant, at 1-4, they're out of it? The Lakers at 2-5, they're out? You got to be kidding me. Is Denver going to keep up with at 5-2? Denver's played the Clippers, the Suns, the Warriors, the Kings, the Lakers, Pelicans, and they play the Bulls tonight. It's a pretty good schedule. But do they keep it up? See, the tried and true test for teams in NBA and in Major League Baseball with these long seasons is, can you keep it up after the All-Star break? And even if you can keep it up after the All-Star break, what are you going to do in the playoffs? Because a playoff team, a team to win the playoff, a hardened team to win the playoffs is not the same team to win a season. Is it good to be the first seed? Is it good to have home court advantage? Yeah, those are all good. But you have to understand that the games that matter the most are in the playoffs. So you need to win enough to make it to the playoffs. And your seeding so much doesn't matter in the NBA. There's some stuff's a little bit more favorable. Golden State, there's been times where we saw like Golden State didn't match up as well with some other teams. There's been years past where they've won, but has had some struggles. Or Houston last year is a lot different than Houston this year. I think they're really feeling that missing the forward position, I think they're really missing Trevor Ariza. He was a big part of the defense. He gave size and ability at the forward position. Carmelo is, like I said, nowhere near what he once was, and is just not. He needs to retire. He should retire. It's just, people want to keep paying him. I don't begrudge him for making money because he has a finite amount of time to do that. But as far as the quality of basketball that's coming out of him right now, it's just, it doesn't look like he is, he's really any sort of benefit at all. On the other end, a lot of people are saying that Kawhi Leonard is going to work well in Toronto. He's a good player. He's, again, it was in a system that needed him to be a person or play away. He wants to play away as more natural. And I think this gives him some more flexibility. They give him more flexibility in Toronto, which a lot of people like that. They like being their individual self. So I can't really knock them for that. Speaking of that, Toronto looks like they're about ready to beat. They have about, it's the beginning of the fourth quarter. There's 10 minutes or so left in the fourth quarter. Toronto's up 107-94 over 76ers. Houston's getting ran right now. Portland's up 74-48 on the Rockets in Houston with 5 minutes in the third quarter. That is significant. So I'll keep an eye on these stats and scores and stuff, and get back to you on those throughout the night. A little bit of breaking news here. That's interesting. All right, hit that. A little bit of breaking news here. It appears the Seattle Seahawks will release Brandon Marshall, wide receiver Brandon Marshall. That's an interesting move for them to move on from Marshall. He's one of those veterans. I've always felt that he's been good in the locker room, and he's been good for teams. But moving on from him shows that they're trying to make move forward with the guys that they have. So let me get you some more information. Nah, it's just a text message. So let me get with my people here and see if I can get some more details for you on that. I don't know. Let's see if I can get him on the line here. No? Okay. It's fine. It's fine. I just want to get some more details on this. Yeah, again, Brandon Marshall was one of those guys. He'll do fine. He'll do fine. I'm not worried about him. He's I don't think after this he's going to continue with a career in the NFL. He may because he got released. He might get picked up by someone that they feel is a Super Bowl contender. All right. I'll reach out with him. I know Brandon has done well with broadcasting. He has. So there's not a need. I know he enjoys playing, and he went into this season and joined a team that he felt he could win a Super Bowl with, because he still wants to do that. But yeah, he's definitely he's already out of the building and everything. That was from earlier today, so why that didn't come through earlier. Anyways, he may keep playing. He may get picked up by another team, but we'll see where he goes at from there. He's done a good job of getting in some decent positions here, even later on in his career. So we'll keep an eye on that. I know David Moore. He was a second-year guy for them up there in Seattle. Has played pretty well. So it's interesting. Like I said, it's probably more so a play where they're always looking to kind of solidify the young talent if they can. So we could see him again. There are several teams. I mean, this is a situation where he could end up in a place like Indy. Indy didn't make any moves on the trade market, but they could definitely pick him up since he'd be an unrestricted free agent. So we'll keep an eye out on that as well. All right. Send that on over here to me. Okay. Okay, so where was I at? All right. So let me get a bit back here into the NFL. I'm going to start with what I was talking about as far as the Buccaneers go. Now, obviously, there wasn't a move made today. For the Bucs to trade Jameis Winston, which which could do a couple different things. Starting Ryan Fitzpatrick pretty much says for now this coaching staff does not have confidence in Jameis. There's only one quarterback in the league right now that has turned the ball over between interceptions and fumbles more than Jameis Winston, and that's Blake Bortles. And Blake Bortles actually led his team to the AFC Championship game last year. Now, with Blake, you get just like with Jameis, you get some high moments and some flashes and some down moments. And the Jags have been willing to ride with Blake Bortles. Whether that'll be the same situation going into the offseason or not, I don't know. It's just kind of we have to wait and see sort of thing. But I don't doubt that these teams are going to want to look at different options when it comes to their quarterbacks. I mean, you can't blame them. The Bucs right now are sitting at the bottom of their division at 3-4. They started out 2-1. Jameis won one game. He's 1-2. And the loss that they got in Cincinnati was nearly a win. With only a few minutes, with less than half a game left, Fitzpatrick comes in, brings them back from a large deficit to tie it with only a couple minutes left. And Cincinnati was able to get into field goal distance, which they did to kick the field goal. But it, 2-1 at home, which is good for the people that go to the games. A 1-1 division, which can boost them up. They're 500 in division. There's still a lot of football to play. But all the upside with the Bucs have come with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And Deshaun Jackson has requested for trade. It seemed like a good fit in Cutter's offense, right? He seemed like a really good addition in Cutter's offense. But it just hasn't worked out. You can't think that he came in thinking that with Mike Evans there he was going to become the number one receiver. With Jameis targeting Cameron Brate so much that he was guaranteed to be the number 2 receiver every game. And then upgrading to adding another guy at the tight end position like O.J. Howard, who they use in a flex capacity between tight end and wide receiver and H. That, again, he's really guaranteed to be that number 2 guy every game either. I mean, just they have so much talent on offense. But I understand Deshaun Jackson's issues. He's not getting targeted. And when he came 2 seasons ago, he looked like he could have been that one of the missing pieces on offense to where They have so many weapons at wide receiver that they should be able to get the ball away so quickly that the defenses weren't going to get there. And then whoever they had at running back could be able to help keep them honest. And the downhill threats would come. But that is not what has transpired. Jackson is currently 4th on the team in receiving yards. Fourth on the team in receptions. He is 2nd in yards. He's tied for 1st with touchdowns. This doesn't show me targets, but his targets aren't where they should be, from what I remember. I'll pull that up here now. Yards. So why is it doing that? Okay, let's see here. Getting that number to call in, 347-237-5539. As far as receiving yards, he's 10th in the league in receiving yards. In targets, let's see here. Don't even put that up here. Evidently, it's not... not a well-kept statistic, I guess. Anyways, I'll find it. I mean, he's averaging 84 yards a game. 84.9, which is actually better than both Brandon Cooks, Zach Ertz, and Robert Woods, who are among the top receivers on their respective teams. So you got 2 guys from the Rams in the top 10, and he has a better average than them. Mike Evans sitting at 4th in total yards, and he's averaging 110 a game. With 4 touchdowns. And if you look back over the Bucs' games, and you look at in game 1, the Saints, they almost gave that one up. They had a huge lead. They win there, put up 48. They beat the Eagles by 6. They lost a close game. Again, with all the mistakes that were made against the Steelers, they still almost beat the Steelers. They lost by a field goal to the Steelers. The Bears, Jameis' first game back in Chicago, was a debacle. They lose a game to Atlanta. Seems like they could have won, but didn't. They beat the Browns because Well, obviously it's the Browns. They just fired their head coach and offensive coordinator because clearly shit wasn't working there. And then Fitzpatrick comes in, leads them back in the second half to almost beating the Bengals. This week at Carolina, they play the Panthers. Now, this could be a game that is really good for them or really bad for them. It could go either way. The Panthers have at times seemed to play down to their competition. They barely beat the Giants. They lost to the Falcons. The Cowboys, they only scored 16 points against the Cowboys. And they really struggled against the Eagles too. So we'll see which Tampa Bay defense shows up. Gerald McCoy was out last week. And if he's back this week, that may be a difference maker for them. So we'll see. Carolina, it looks like they're giving them an 80. ESPN. Yeah, they're giving me an 80.3 chance of victory. Minus 6.5. So every team gets 2 for being at home. So they're saying that they'll actually score 4.5 more points. So a score better, whichever way you cut it. The money line is minus 310 for the Panthers and plus 250. The over-under is 54.5, which this might be interesting to take the over on. I mean, they held Dallas to 8 points, but Baltimore put up 21. The Eagles put up 17 from Washington, 31 from the Giants, 21 from the Bengals, 24 from the Falcons. This might be interesting to see which direction, again, they go. Deshaun Jackson has played better in every game that Fitzpatrick started in. He clearly didn't get moved by the deadline, but we'll see him. And by the way, the MRI came back yesterday and showed that the Bucs rookie defensive tackle Vita Vea does not have a torn ACL. So where he's at as far as health, if he's available, that again could change things as well. There's some guys that are frustrated, though, in Tampa. You know? And they just seem to play better with Fitzpatrick. I mean, guys, you can't underestimate energy and how much, if people enjoy working with someone versus another. I mean, I'm sure all of us have had somebody that, you know, you prefer to hang out with or work with or go on a trip with or, play with, whatever it is, have a drink with versus others. And Jameis just doesn't have things put together right now. But this defense right now Bucs defense is hampered with injuries. We'll see what happens moving forward. But I think that we're going to see a bit of a difference, and they're going to have to go a different direction, I think. That they signed Dare Umbale, running back from the practice squad. So they're clearly looking at some options right now with their depth there in Tampa. Particularly at running back. Ronald Jones is questionable injury-wise and production-wise. Jacquizz Rodgers just hasn't been the same guy. And he's 25 yards on 13 carries this season. Hasn't been much help there. Charles Sims, he's had 95 yards all season. So he hasn't worked out there. Peyton Barber has been their main guy. We're here week 8, and he has 345 yards and 1 touchdown on the season. And that touchdown came just last week. So week 7, he went 7. Like when your feature guy goes 7 weeks before he gets a touchdown, probably not feature guy. So I don't know why they didn't address this need more in the offseason. They felt like the kid out of USC, the rookie out of USC, was going to make a bigger difference than he has. I don't know how else to look at it. By the way, Ali Marpet did get a contract extension. They did sign Ali Marpet. Again, he was a late round gem for them. So he's getting a 5-year extension worth around just south of $55 million. $26.8 million guaranteed. That's a good signing. It's just I can understand. The thing is with this Bucs team, it's felt like such a roller coaster. Every year, they make acquisitions. They make good draft picks. It looks like guys are headed in the draft picks headed in the right direction. And it's just disappointment. Season after season after season after season. Again, the ownership not sticking with the head coach is a big part of it. To fire Gruden, then they hire a guy that they promote from DB coach to defensive coordinator, and then they fire the head coach and they say, no, we're going to make you the head coach now. And then they say, no, you're not working. If every 2 or 3 seasons you're going to change your head coach, what kind of confidence does that say that you have in somebody to make a difference? The fact that they got rid of Lovey but kept Cutter said that they felt like they had the guy in-house and they didn't want to lose him, so they were willing to make that move. Dirk Cutter doesn't seem to be able to provide that same offense he used to with Jameis and win games. I don't know if it's something that he feels he needs to, in their coaches meeting, talk with the coordinators a bit more. That maybe maybe he talks with Todd Monken a bit more and see what they can do differently. I don't know. It's or get with Mike Buchanan. Mike has experience with quarterbacks. But it's just what the Bucs are putting out on the field as far as getting it done football is not there. Again, I don't have a problem. People you want to fight and say, well, they keep the hot hand in and the Bucs play. They keep their hot hand in and they keep playing Fitzpatrick. Maybe they win more games. Maybe. They already are past their bye. Already had their bye. They chose after their bye to go ahead and start Jameis. So, Jameis didn't have terrible games. Completely terrible games. Passing-wise. Against Atlanta and Cleveland. Didn't do great. But he kind of, especially with Cleveland, put him in positions to win. Gets that win. They should have been able to close out the game against Atlanta and didn't. So we'll have to see moving forward. Is Fitzpatrick the answer? I don't know. But he's shown to do more this season than Jameis in pretty much the same amount of football. pretty much the same amount of football. He's been able to do more. It's been better. So, the Browns. It's not a secret. Baker Mayfield was not big on Hugh Jackson. And if I tell you that, and then you go back and watch Hard Knocks, you can see it a bit watching Hard Knocks. But Hugh Jackson didn't seem to be a guy that really instilled a bunch of confidence in people either. So you can see why. Baker's going to feel the coaches out. He seems like people seem to say, "Oh, he has this rogue mentality to him." It's not necessarily a rogue mentality. It's that his attitude is epitome of what a millennial is. Listen, I'll go out and do whatever I need to do to get the job done. But if you're going to tell me to do something or you want something done, explain it to me. Why you want to do it that way. It's not that I'm not going to do it your way. I just want to understand why you want to do it that way. Help me make sense of what you're trying to make me do. And there's nothing wrong with getting understanding or explanation for something that needs to be done. It just isn't. Sometimes people have problems with that. I don't know why. We're talking about adults. We're talking about grown men. We're talking about professionals. If you as a coach cannot teach or explain guys how to do something, then you're ineffective. You're not helping anybody. I was at the Shrine game this past year, and they were testing these defensive guys to kind of really see if they could figure out how to do this particular drill. And it was SWAT. And it was a cut of field. So you're coming on to the offensive lineman, and they wanted you to SWAT. And after you SWAT, they wanted you to cut up field. Right? Now, I took a couple still photos. I did not videotape it. It's not fair to put this monstrosity of confusion out there. Guys were flailing themselves. They looked pretty pathetic trying to do or figure out this drill. And the coach just stood back, explained it a couple times, corrected them once, and it wasn't working. They weren't really getting it. One guy just kind of resorted to doing kind of a right hook instead of a SWAT. And it was kind of an epic fail in some regard. It was tough to kind of gauge any sort of form from it at all. So but it was funny. But also at the same time, you see that coaches weren't just there. Some of them weren't there to really teach how to do the drill. Again, this is something that it was just shows there is a huge gap in the level of training and quality of training that someone gets in the NFL versus college. And sometimes kids get better training and facilities in high school than college. But college is where there's such an uneven playing ground in a sport that there's supposed to be even playing ground in. Not everybody has the same facilities. Actually, most people don't. Your Ohio States, your Michigans, your Alabamas, Nebraska, those schools that are Texas, they're earning up there at the top, have the best facilities, have the best training staff, have the best strength and conditioning and meals and meal plans for their students. Those schools have that edge over the rest. All right, speaking of college football, let me get into the rankings. Now, we know, just so I throw it out there now, that normally there is some pretty okay difference in between Associated Press poll and coaches poll, so and the college football playoff poll. So I'm going to stick to comparing against the AP poll. So the AP poll, again, there's writers that make up this poll, that put this poll together, that vote on this, and they're watching all the games, most of the games, or they're covering it. Whereas coaches, they literally have assistants that go and do this for them. So it's not even the coach doing it. But from 25, starting at 25, and this is the first college football playoff poll. All right. At 25, the University of Virginia, of the ACC, the Cavaliers. They're first in the ACC Coastal, and they're sitting at 25. Number 24, Iowa State. At 4-3, they're sitting at fourth in the Big 12, with wins over Texas Tech, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Akron. Their big losses on the season being to Iowa, Oklahoma, and TCU. Teams that have all been in the top 25 at some point. At number 23, Fresno State. They're sitting at 7-1 with their only loss coming to Minnesota, but with wins over UCLA, Toledo, and Wyoming, to name a couple. Just beat Hawaii 50-20. And their two biggest tests this season are going to be between Boise State and San Diego State, which are the second and third last weeks of the season. So they're sitting there at 23. We'll see what they can do moving forward. Boston College at 6-2 is your 22nd team. They're sitting at second in the Atlantic with wins over Temple, Wake Forest, and UMass, with their losses coming to Purdue, who was previously winless, and to North Carolina State, who's been ranked in the top 25, as well as beating Miami just last weekend, and Louisville the week before by 3 scores. So Boston College is in there as your 22nd. Speaking of North Carolina State, they're in there at 21. They are 4th in the ACC Atlantic right now, with wins over Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Boston College, losing the last 2 weeks to Clemson and Syracuse. Still, again, found a way to sneak into the top 25 of this college football playoff poll. At 20, Texas A&M, 5-3 record, with a close loss to Clemson, second game of the year, and a thrashing to Alabama, being their 2 big losses, but with wins over South Carolina and Kentucky, have people interested in them. Again, they lose by 2 scores last week to Mississippi State. At number 19, Syracuse. Again, just coming off of a win over the aforementioned North Carolina State, with a close loss to Clemson and a blowout win over Florida State. They're sitting there 6 wins, only 2 losses, 3rd in the Atlantic. At number 18 is Mississippi State. Now, a lot of these teams are in the South, the ACC or SEC, and a lot of these teams have actually played each other. Mississippi State had a 21-point win over K-State at the beginning of the year. Got bashed by Kentucky. Lost a close game to Florida, and lost by 2 scores to LSU. But just last week had a win over Texas A&M, put them right back in it. They're sitting at number 18 in the college football playoff poll. It's the first one. This will get revised throughout the season, throughout the last 4 weeks here, 5 weeks of the season. At number 17 is the Texas Longhorns. Their first loss, that first loss was really close to Maryland. Maryland looked good at the beginning of the season until things started to tail off. They were really outperforming. And Texas has wins over USC, TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Baylor, and just lost last weekend by a field goal to Oklahoma State, which in the minds of the committee, with 2 losses, moved them down to number 17. At number 16, out of the Big Ten West, second in the Big Ten West right now, Iowa State. The Hawkeyes have wins over Iowa State, Minnesota, and Maryland. They lost last week to by a score to Penn State, and they lost to Wisconsin by 2 scores earlier in the year at home. They play Purdue this weekend. It's going to be that might be a tough game for them. Purdue is at home, and they really have something to prove at this point, and they would love to spoil a season for the Hawkeyes. The Utes at 6-2, sitting first in the Pac-12 South with wins over Stanford, USC, and UCLA. There's lone losses coming to Washington and Washington State out of the North. They'll be looking at Herm Edwards' squad on the 3rd of November. They do not play this weekend, but they play on the 3rd of November. Is that right? It's this weekend. What are you talking about? Yeah, this weekend. At Arizona State. Why would you say that they're messing with me? Your producer's messing with me. At number 14, in the Big Ten, Penn State. With a big win last week at home over Iowa State and fending off Indiana the week before, 2 losses coming to Michigan State and Ohio State. Being the rest of the competition they've had the rest of the season, they have Michigan at home, or Michigan at Michigan this weekend at 3:45. That's over on ESPN. Be a game to watch. Could be make or break for both of those two teams and their season. Number 13, West Virginia. The Mountaineers are coming off a win over Baylor and really beaten down on Baylor after losing the only game they've lost all season to Iowa State. They also have wins over Tennessee, K-State, and Texas Tech. They played a close game, even though it was a couple-score victory. It was a pretty tight game against KU, but Baylor, they really blew out 54-14. They have Texas at Austin this weekend, 3:30. Be a fun game to watch. A lot of good games this weekend. And then at 12, out of Orlando, the undefeated, and still undefeated, UCF Knights wins over FAU, Pitt, Memphis. All this season, they will play Thursday. They'll play Thursday against Temple. And then close out the season with Navy, Cincinnati, and at Raymond James Stadium on the 23rd of November. The number 11 team, Florida Gators, sitting at 6-2. Their big losses this season, again, have come to Kentucky and to Georgia. Vandy was a close game. They got a lot of breaks their way against LSU and Mississippi State. Tennessee, they played well against Tennessee and Colorado State. Kentucky really beat them. So we'll see what they do this weekend against Missouri. Missouri is actually they're not too bad of a dog in this game. It's -5. They're in the swamp. This is a winnable game for Missouri, I think, if they can get that passing game going. But Florida sitting third in the East, SEC East, and is your number 11 team. All right, your top 10. Sitting again, everybody else in the top 10 has either one loss or no losses. Sitting at number 10 with one loss on the season, Ohio State. They're coming off their first loss last week to Purdue. This would be 3 straight times that they've been to Purdue and have lost on the road to Purdue. 49-20. Purdue, like I said, is one of those sneaky trap games. I've seen many teams at their highs, their mediums, their lows, go in there and just get annihilated. Purdue can play football. They're coming off this embarrassing win and now is playing another team that is starting to feel their way and feels that they should be doing better. But they have them at home. Nebraska Cornhuskers will play at noon this weekend. That game will be over on Fox against Ohio State. Be an interesting game. At number 9, the Kentucky Wildcats. 7-1. Their only loss still coming to them from Texas A&M, which was by 1 score. At Missouri, they had to really fight hard against Missouri. They beat them by 1 point, but then, again, that's all you need. But they have really been able to do quite a number this season. Beating Central Michigan to start the season, Florida in the second game of the year. Mississippi State was ranked. They beat them 28-7. South Carolina 24-10. Texas A&M, it was just a dogfight. They lost by 6 points. If they can get one more touchdown, it's a different game. Vandy was a close game, 14-7, and then last week 15-14 there. Georgia's going to be a much taller glass of water for them to handle. We'll see what they do with Georgia this weekend. That game's at 3:30 on CBS. The number 8 team is Washington State. Washington State was kind of that question mark team. We didn't know if they were going to go up or down the season. They have a pretty favorable schedule, but also have wins over USC, Oregon, and Stanford. They play Cal this weekend at 10:45 Eastern. If anybody on Central Time or West Coast, or East Coast rather, wants to stay up and watch that, that should be a good game. They're both high-scoring offenses, but they close out the season with a pretty tough schedule. Cal, Colorado, Arizona not so much, and Washington. And they have Washington at home. At number 7, the Oklahoma Sooners. Slipped up once this season against Texas, lost by a field goal, but pretty much every other game has been not even a sniff. Iowa State is really the next closest game, even though Army was, they did have some struggles in the Army game. But really, as far as competition, Iowa State's that next team that has had success against them last year, and this year they beat them by 10. So this week they play Texas Tech. Again, got to watch out there. Could be a trap game. Texas Tech ended the unbeaten streak of Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago. That'll be at 8 p.m. on ABC. And that will be in Lubbock. At number 6, the Georgia Bulldogs. As you already know, they are playing Kentucky this weekend. Hopefully this is a good game. Georgia has proven this season that they can play down to competition at times. And depending on which quarterback's in, you may get something a little bit different. But by no means should anybody count out the Wildcats. Playing good this season. They've done a good job of developing and putting together something respectable. Whether they beat Georgia or not, I doubt they do. But LSU did open up some things. Some defects that Georgia may have this season that they can pick on. Number 5, the Michigan Wolverines. You know, this is at this point in the season, this is the highest that Harbaugh's ever had this team. This lone loss came at the beginning of the year against Notre Dame, who had weeks, months to prepare for this game. But have turned around, and after that loss, have only come close to something that smelled like defeat once, and that was at Northwestern, where they made a bunch of mistakes. But other than that, they really haven't looked back. Even against, they won by 2 scores against Michigan State last weekend, but you just had the feeling like they could have done more and didn't. This week, again, they have Penn State at home. It's at 3:45 at ESPN, so it's going to be a good game to watch because Penn State is really fighting for an opportunity to move to the next level for them. It's the same thing Harbaugh's looking for as well, moving to that next level. With 2 losses, very unlikely to get into the playoffs. At number 4, speaking of that first loss for the year for Michigan, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I've heard some people that actually was arguing that Notre Dame should be ranked 1 because they went on the road and played Michigan in a tough game there, a neutral site game, and won, and have had some pretty tough games this season, traveling to Virginia Tech and winning. They will also travel to Northwestern and to USC at the end of the season. They do play Syracuse at home later in the season as well. So they've drawn a pretty tough schedule. They did have Stanford at home as well. Stanford was ranked 7th when they beat them by a couple scores. So I've heard some argue for them being higher. The committee doesn't agree with that. They have them at number 4. At number 3, LSU. A lot of people had doubted Ed Orgeron, but this was clearly, as you could see, a good hire. He has won by large margins. For example, when they beat Georgia, he's lost by some close margins. For example, against Florida. And he's had some hard-fought games, like against Auburn and Mississippi State. He's come out on the better more times than not over the last 2 seasons, and he's shown this season, having Barrows back there at quarterback, somebody that can run that system a bit more, what he can do. This week, prime time on CBS at 8 p.m., they will play Alabama. Will we see the LSU that played Georgia, or will we see the LSU that played Florida? I don't know. But we will find out this Saturday. Be a very good game to see. I'm definitely tuning into that game. At number 2, as probably many had expected, Clemson. Clemson has had some close calls this season. Syracuse has been one. They had another close call against Texas A&M, which, for all intents and purposes, it felt like Texas A&M had that game won. Nonetheless, they've come out without a loss. And they haven't given up. This defense hasn't given up more than 26 points in any game. And the ones that they've given up points that in games that they've given up more than 10 points are those 2 games that they came close to losing. Well, I guess Georgia Tech put on 21. So, but still, this defense has been very good. Georgia Tech actually presents an interesting issue because they run a triple option. So the offense is a bit complex and you don't see very often. So giving up 21 points but still putting up 49, I mean, it's a solid win. But still, that defense have held up pretty well to pretty much whatever anybody else plays. I don't see them losing the rest of the season, although Boston College and Duke should be some interesting games. Their second to last and third to last games of the season could be interesting. And number 1, Alabama. I don't think anybody really questioned if Alabama should be number 1. They're averaging over 50 points a game. They are just lighting up their competition. There hasn't been a single game where it's come close to them losing. The game they actually had the toughest time in and scored the least points was against Missouri. A lot of it is because Missouri kept the ball away from them. They didn't turn it into scoring, but they kept the ball away from them. And they got 3 turnovers too. So keep the ball away. You get turnovers, then that kind of leads to some victories, but it did not lead to scores. It was a close game, I think, at the end of the first. I think it was 10-13 at the end of that first quarter. Alabama opened it up in the second. I mean, Missouri scored in the first quarter and didn't score again after that. So that just goes to show this Alabama defense comes at from different angles. It's very good defense. Doesn't give up a lot to the pass, like deep threats like they have in the past. They're really good at stopping the run and keeping, for the most part, keeping teams off the board and putting their offense back on the field. So that completes the top 25. So I'm gonna look a little bit more into the games that we have coming this weekend, and to help me do that, I welcome in. He is the editor for Cold Hard Truth on Sports and a contributor for golf, and our primary contributor for college football. He's also the author of the P.K. Frazier novels and a co-host for the show, Mr. Kevin Crest. How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
Oh, good evening, Matthew. It's been a while. Since we hooked up.
Has been.
I apologize for tonight. I've been traveling and had some stuff going on, but got your invitation and got home and wanted to make sure I called in to.
Well,
great rundown, by the way, by you of the top 25. I agree with almost, which is kind of odd. I agree with most of what you had to say tonight, so that's kind of unusual. But
well, the traveling has made you wiser.
As far as I'm concerned, there's
that's all I could conclude from that.
Yeah. So there's a couple of teams I'm just going to call out. I mean, I think Kentucky's a pretender. I mean, I think they're probably a top 25 team, but number 8, I don't know. They haven't played anybody and haven't beat anybody yet. That's really good. So have to see how they do. They're at they take on Georgia this week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll show us what Mark Stoops has there in Kentucky. It's been a great job. Great job. A tough place to win. And so I think I give him credit for that. They played really well. We should do that down the stretch because I think their schedule. I'm not in front of a computer. I think their schedule is pretty much backloaded this season, but we'll see. And then of course the Alabama LSU game. Alabama LSU. If LSU can find a way to put some points on the board, I think they can give Alabama a run because LSU's defense is as good as it comes. So that's a big game. I mean, I think that's the only game left on Alabama's schedule that they can lose. I know the Auburn game's a rivalry game, but Auburn's not up to the class of Alabama this year. In fact, I'm not sure anybody is.
But that's what's
Clemson
kind of
been
trouble. That's been kind of the dangerous part of Auburn always. I mean, the year that they had the missed field goal ran back, I think Auburn earlier that season had started off like 0-4 or something. So how good Auburn is really isn't contingent on can they beat Alabama. They've been that only exception really for Alabama. And then them and Ole Miss. Ole Miss has been kind of that mediocre team, but under Freeze, they were able to find a way to beat Alabama a couple years in a row. You think that would have saved his job in and of itself, but are you like tuning your steel drum there, or I mean?
I'm stir frying vegetables.
Oh, that's
trying to multitask tonight. My wife is out of town.
Oh, you take time to stir fry when she's out of town?
Well, I do all the cooking anyway, so tonight I had some stuff to do. So I will keep from clanging the iron iron skillet. But anyway, but getting back to the Alabama. I don't think they're beatable, and I think there's only a couple teams that can. I think LSU can. I mean, that game's in Death Valley. I don't know the time. I think it's a night game. You're talking about a night game in Baton Rouge, and LSU's had pretty good success against Alabama, and with Nick Saban. So, but it's a big game, and I think Alabama can probably survive a loss. To be honest with you, and still.
Oh yeah,
advance
I don't think that
they're that good.
I don't think they're.
I think they can.
They're a -15 favorite right now in Death Valley.
I mean,
This is the difference between Alabama at number 1
how good they. I mean,
and LSU at number 3. The committee thinks LSU is the third best team in the country, but yet the odds makers say. We got them by 2 scores, a little over 2 scores. The high end of 2 scores.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have LSU as number 3. I mean, LSU is a good team. I would put Notre Dame at number 3. I would probably put Georgia at 4 and LSU at 5 or 6, if that. But the trouble is that whole middle of the pack. There are a lot of really good teams that have lost. Ohio State's a really good team. They just haven't played very well,
Yeah. Freshman quarterback, too.
Had some difficulty, right? Yeah, freshman quarterback. You talked about Clemson. They're struggling at Syracuse, but, Lawrence went down in that game. They had to bring in, a third stringer. And so, I just see Alabama and Clemson kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. For a number of reasons, whether it's coaching or talent or whatever, I just see them above the other teams, those two, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them meet for the national championship. I don't see anybody. If Alabama gets by LSU this week, I don't see anybody on Clemson or Alabama's schedule that's going to give either one of them trouble because the Coastal Division in the ACC. I mean, Miami, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, Boston College, they both got like 1 or 2 losses in conference. And so there's no opponent on the other side of the league for Clemson to play. Alabama's similar. I mean, you're probably going to end up seeing Georgia on the other side again in the SEC championship game. But this time that'll knock Georgia. If Alabama beats Georgia, that knocks Georgia out of the playoffs. So, I just don't see anybody challenging those two teams. Notre Dame has looked pretty good. I mean, seriously, they have. That win over Michigan was ugly, and we thought, well, we discounted because that's Michigan not playing well. But Notre Dame, their schedule's amazing. I mean that's I think they're right there at number 3. I would not put them at 4. I'd put them at number 3. They're undefeated. I don't know why the committee chose to put them at 3. I mean, you look at their wins, their quality wins: Michigan, Virginia Tech, Stanford. I mean, come on. I think that was a faux pas. I think that's a misstep by the committee to put them down there. But the thing is, as we've always said before, Matthew, after this week every year, is it doesn't matter because LSU plays Alabama this week.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter where you put them.
You know,
you can put Alabama and LSU 1 and 2.
You know,
right?
We've kind of said this in years past. You can't really conscionably, in my opinion, put out any sort of ranking until this point of the season. But really, the good thing for the committee is usually in the next 4 weeks, the teams pretty much make it for 4 teams. Like right now, you could probably say the 4 teams that are there are okay. It's fine to have those 4 teams there. But you know, anything outside that 8, you're looking at 8. Right now, at the top 10, right now, anybody in the top 10 can still make it. Truly. In the top 10.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah,
we're looking at, okay, so Nebraska.
Is there a two-loss team? Is there a two-loss team in the top 10? I didn't look this. Is there a two-loss team in the top 10?
No. The only two. There's only one two-loss team in the top 12, and that's Florida.
Okay. And they're not going to make it. So
yeah,
they're not going to get in it. And so so you got Penn State with a loss, Ohio State with a loss. You know, you got guys with all these losses. It just depends on what happens the rest of the season because Michigan still has to play Penn State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they play them this weekend.
And Michigan has to play Ohio State, right? So you've got all these games going on. And no disrespect to your western half of the Big Ten, but there's nobody there that's going to contend. I mean, Iowa and Wisconsin we thought were good, but they've taken on the chin too a couple of times. I mean, so you don't really have
a team. The crazy thing is
that
Northwestern is actually leading the West right now.
Yeah, they are, and they've got a decent team, but they're not going to challenge Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan whoever comes out of that. I don't think. I mean, I could be totally surprised. I mean, but the Big Ten in the past has been fairly predictable. I mean, there haven't been a lot of surprises in the Big Ten. Right? You don't get kind of this weirdness happening because you know who the teams are.
And Northwestern
Michigan's defense.
Northwestern really plays down to the competition. They should have lost. They should have lost at home to Nebraska. They should, by all means, they had lost that game. They came back in overtime and won.
Yeah, they should have.
And then they can only beat Rutgers by a field goal, and then they turn around and beat Wisconsin 31-17 at home. Now they have they have Notre Dame this weekend at home. So it's really this weird vibe. That's inexplicably Northwestern. They're so up or so down. It's so bipolar with what you get out of them. I mean, they lost to Duke by 2 scores, and then they lose by a field goal to Akron and by a field goal to Michigan, but then beat Michigan State by 10. They barely get by Nebraska, barely get by Rutgers, and then beat Wisconsin by 2 scores. Like it just doesn't make sense.
I think that says more about Wisconsin than it does about Northwestern. I mean, they're just not as good as we thought they were going to be. I mean, I'm talking about Wisconsin.
I said that from the beginning. I said that from the beginning of the season, though. I mean, people were just ready to anoint Wisconsin.
Your Huskers kind of snatched. But they weren't. Yeah, you're right. That was a good call. Okay, and your Huskers kind of snatched. Defeat from the jaws of victory there at Northwestern. I don't know what happened with that, but Scott Frost is having some growing pains there in first year in Lincoln. But we'll see. I mean, you've got some guys in first year of their tenure where they inherited a team that was nothing like what they want to play. Right? I mean, the style is nothing like what he wants to play. I mean, Chad Morris here at Arkansas has the same issue. It's like, well, I want to run a spread offense, and I inherit a pro-style personnel from Brett Bielema. He just can't do it. I mean, the defense is lousy because none of the defensive players know how to play at pace, and he just doesn't have the personnel, and it's frustrating to watch these guys. And Scott Frost is one. We know Scott Frost is a good coach. I mean, there's no question. We know he can coach football, but he just hasn't had a chance to get anybody in there that that runs his style. So we'll have to see. And it's frustrating to watch. Nebraska. I like Nebraska. I've always liked Nebraska, but it's frustrating to watch him, right? And probably more so for you, obviously. Because you're looking at a team going, oh my God!
Yeah,
how do you go 1-7?
Well, this season it's more of like I stepped away from. I'm not so much watching. I'm just watching in curiosity this year. I have
90 seconds.
I have zero expectations at all this season. And that's why I said at the beginning of the year, I don't expect them to do much. Their absolute high ceiling is 8. I think the comfort level of number of potential wins is closer to 6, but they'll probably do worse than that. And it's just a very tough schedule that they have. They have a really tough schedule this year. I mean, they draw Michigan at Michigan. They got
60
Ohio
seconds.
State at Ohio State. They had to go to Northwestern. They did get a whole bunch of home games. They had one game cancel. They had to spend a whole bunch of money and pull a whole bunch of strings with the NCAA and a lot of strings with the Big Ten to be able to play a non-FBS school on their schedule and fill in a game there during their bye week. So they've had 0 bye weeks. Essentially, their first week of the season was a bye week. So it's just been kind of them learning and meshing and then having a lot of guys in there that were either committed or on the roster to start the season that just weren't fits. And he's like, if you're not going to get with the program,
10 seconds.
Just leave. I'll sign your paperwork. That's fine. If you're not going to get with the program, I'd rather have you go be successful or go do something somewhere else and not be detrimental here. So he doesn't mince words with people. He doesn't sit here and pretend like, oh, well, you got to kind of tough it out. No. If you can't do it here, then go somewhere else. Because we want to be able to have people that have bought in and that want to do it here. And that's just the plain and simple. So we've had a lot of guys leave, and for some people they say that's bad optics. I disagree. With that, I don't think there's anything bad about what's happening there. I think it's the attrition that needed to happen. That the guy had a squad for essentially in 2.5 weeks, ends up putting together a top 25 recruiting class. Like that's phenomenal. While still coaching another team, I mean, it's just the recruiting and stuff that he was able to do. While coaching another team to win and trying to put another team and a staff, it's crazy. He was doing so much to think that they were going to come in and just be lights out was crazy. It's just crazy to think that.
Well, no, he was.
And they do have.
Well, he's doing the same. He did the same thing.
They do have a pretty complex offense that he runs.
He did the same thing at Nebraska, though, that Chad Morris is having to do at Arkansas. They're trying to change the tires while the car's rolling, right? They're trying to recruit and get their style of player in there and still coach a football team. That's very difficult to do. And so what you're seeing, I think, at Nebraska and at Arkansas and some other schools with first-year coaches, Arizona's one, UCLA, you're seeing teams that aren't prepared because the coaching staff is trying to get players in. And they know they have a grace year, maybe two, to look bad before they have to get their act together. And so these guys are on the recruiting trail instead of preparing game plans, and it shows. I mean, it just shows. And so we'll give them a pass. But next year, if Nebraska starts 1-6, that's not good.
And by the way,
that's not acceptable.
Arkansas losing 31-45 to Vandy is an acceptable loss at this point because Vandy has looked good. I thought Vandy was going to beat Florida. 2 years last year they should have beat Florida. This year they had them going in that direction and just lost momentum. But 31-45.
Well, I was at that game. Okay. I was at the Vanderbilt-Arkansas game. It would be acceptable except that the defense quit in the second half. The Arkansas defense quit. They quit playing in the second half. And that's a concern. They had no enthusiasm. They didn't want to be out there. So I was sitting I was at the game with a guy that played for Arkansas under Lou Holtz. Okay. And he said they should just start all freshmen and sophomores now because the upperclassmen have given up. They're like, I wasn't your guy. You're not my coach. You're not the guy who recruited me. They've got a problem there. And I think Scott Frost may have a similar problem at Nebraska. But I think really points up to at Nebraska, Matthew, is how bad a hire Mike Riley was. I mean, I think that's just showing what that was, right?
I think
that was not a good hire.
It wasn't, and it did set the program back. It did set the program back quite a bit. If you could have went from Bo Pelini to Scott Frost, I think a lot of those Bo Pelini guys, like Avery Moss, who's in the NFL, and other guys that were along those lines, he would have been able to maintain some of those guys, because Bo Pelini, as much as he wasn't a Husker, he was because he was there under Solich. Because he was under Solich, he got in. He was in the club. He was christened because he was a defensive coordinator under Solich. So he was there. He beat Michigan. So he had his way in, and going from Pelini to Frost would have, again, Frost would have had this exact same staff, by the way, because this is exactly the same staff he hired there, and they would have all still came with him to Nebraska the same way they did. It just would have been 3 years sooner. You don't have to have the Mike Riley era in there. Again, Riley brought in some good guys. Stanley Morgan Jr., one of those guys that really the Davis twins, good kids along the defensive line there. Obviously he brought in some guys, but I don't think the drop off is like this. You don't have those same kind of losses because what they were running a spread concept, highly spread RPO type concept already at Nebraska with some pro passing in it, but it was still something that those skill levels, those people, they could have molded in to They would have been able to use that staff better than what Mike Riley has. Again, it's not a knock on the kids that are there at Nebraska now. It's not at all. It's just that a lot of the guys weren't a fit, or more so, not being a fit, weren't buying in, hadn't bought in. You know, that's why he's like, we're 4 games in. If you haven't bought in and you want out, go. You're fine. It's fine. I'm not upset. My feelings aren't hurt. You know, if you don't want to be here, then don't. And it's not. And it's
yeah,
not
I think that's one of the advantages of the new red shirt rule. It lets them go 4 games into the season before actually having to decide. Because I think, especially under a new coaching staff, I think that's fantastic. I mean, you look and see what Dabo did at Clemson with Kelly Bryant. You know, he said, "Look, we're going a different direction. You can still transfer and be eligible next year," which I think is fantastic. I think it's a good. I mean, gosh, I don't usually praise the NCAA because I think they're a train wreck and they're a mess. But in this case, they got it right, and I think Dabo got it right. Except of course, Lawrence got injured against Syracuse, and Kelly Bryant's still eligible, and they're going, "Oh my God, did you really screw this up?" And obviously, that didn't happen. Lawrence came back and is playing, but you know, I think for the it's one of those few times that the NCAA is actually looking at the student athlete and going, "What's best for them?" And I think what's best for them is to be able to transfer if the situation isn't right, because you know, in the past we've always talked about it's all one-sided. The coach can do whatever. The coach gets to leave. The poor kids have to stay there, right?
Yeah.
They're beholden and they have to sit out a year, right? Well, this new redshirt rule I think is good because it gives the kids a chance to see how they're going to fit into the new system. And they can play 4 games, and then the coach can go, "Well, you're not my kind of guy." And in some cases, of course, I think the kid from Clemson though is a graduate transfer, so he wouldn't have been affected either way because he could have gone. I think he's graduated already. I think he's in grad school. But for the guys that aren't in grad school, you know, they can take advantage of that 4 games, evaluate if I want to be here or I not want to be here, and they can either transfer on their own or the school can go, "Hey, you know, we're going to cut you loose and you go." I think it's good. And I think that the student athletes should be able to do whatever they want. If the coach can, why can't the kids? I mean, you know, there's like this. The coaches, we've talked about this. The coaches predict some kind of Armageddon if you let full total transfer. But I don't know. I was very happy in college. Very few of my friends transferred out of college. We could transfer anytime we wanted to. I could have gone to any school I wanted to. I was happy. You know, so I changed majors. I stayed in school. I just think that that's overblown by the coaches. I think it's a smokescreen for them to retain power over the student athlete. I mean, that's what I think. I do not think that if you just open it all up for let them transfer, no matter what, who cares? I mean, if you can't keep your kid happy on a football team, that's on you. You recruited them.
Well, they're
you told
trying
the
to
fans
find.
You can take care of them, and if you don't take care of them, you know that's on you.
But that's the thing is, like with professional contracts, they do have a certain number of years. You know, and you know what? Maybe it is that
Yeah, but they're getting paid.
But no. I'm just saying.
They're getting paid.
The money aside, of course, the money aside. Don't argue the money. We know they're getting paid. But I'm saying if we're trying to say, well, because these kids aren't being paid, why are we beholding them to stay there for 4 years? Why aren't we giving them an out? Because why should they have to sit out a whole year? You know, that's what they're worried. They're worried that the landscape of football that they're going to. It's going to be the Wild West if somebody can just transfer and not sit out. You know, I'd be interesting to see.
But here's the problem:
if they would allow them to transfer and walk on somewhere, same way like in the NFL that they do if somebody is released. So we're after the trade deadline, but Brandon Marshall was released today, so he can sign with any team he wants. He doesn't have to worry about a trade. So if some kid wants to leave school and hasn't played 4 games this season and wants to walk on somewhere and play right away, his eligibility should be available right away because he's not taking a scholarship. He's taking a walk-on.
But here's the problem, Matthew. Yeah, but here's the problem. I mean, these scholarships are year to year. When a student athlete signs an agreement to come to a school and they get a scholarship, that scholarship can be rescinded after every season.
Not all.
So it's an uneven playing field.
All Big Ten schools actually do 4 years. It's required by the Big Ten.
Well, not all of them. Not all schools do. Not all conferences do that way.
And again, that's
so
where
if I can rescind your scholarship, right? Then if I can rescind your scholarship, then I ought to be able to go wherever I want because I'm not guaranteed anything. In some cases. Now, at the Big Ten, that's great, but it's not that way everywhere. That's not a 4 or 5 year agreement. It's not, and so it's all one sided to the side of the school and to the So that's where I feel like if you can't make the kid happy, then okay. If you want to go somewhere else, sitting out. I mean. This is short shelf life, right? Sitting out of here anymore is kind of extreme, and I just think that the landscape has changed to the extent that there was a time when coaches made $400,000 a year, and that was a big deal, but now, Nick Saban's making $8 million a year, and his assistants are making $1 or $2 million. And the kids, okay, they get a nice scholarship, okay? They get a scholarship worth a couple $100,000. I get that. But that can also be yanked out from under them. And so the economics have changed, the landscape has changed somewhat. And you look at Jalen Hurts. Hurts decided not to transfer. But Hurts, I think I have it wrong.
He's a grad.
Hurts
transfer.
might be the one that actually has he's the grad guy, right?
Yes.
So he can transfer after the season and play anywhere he wants next year. It's not Kelly Bryant. It's Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Kelly Bryant's a senior.
That's why
Kelly Bryant's a senior with
right.
1 year of eligibility left. This was his last year of eligibility. Anyways.
Right. That's why it was important for Dabo to release to let him, redshirt this year and then be eligible next year. Yeah, I had the two guys confused. Yes, Jalen Hurts is a different situation. So Jalen Hurts doesn't have to transfer this year because whether he does or not, he'll be immediately eligible next year because he's a graduate transfer. I had them mixed up. But so Kelly Bryant, so Dabo Swinney did Kelly Bryant a solid, seriously, in saying, hey, we're going a different direction, to let you redshirt this year, and then you can go elsewhere, which I think is a stand-up thing because he could have strung him along, but Nick Saban isn't actually stringing Jalen Hurts along because Jalen Hurts is in a unique situation where he doesn't have to redshirt. He can still play. In fact, if Tua goes down, who knows if Jalen Hurts can't come in and lead them to a national championship, right? Because you're only as good as your backup quarterback. So, I don't think Nick Saban's doing Jalen Hurts a disservice because he can transfer and play next year, and he will. I'm sure he'll transfer after the season. Why wouldn't he? I mean, who wouldn't want Jalen Hurts on their roster?
I mean,
just like Kelly Bryant.
I think
five or six offers.
I said immediately after the national championship game. If again, I did in the post game we did. After it was actually the morning after. if he doesn't it would be such a surprise if he doesn't transfer this year. But again, I saw the writing on the wall. Maybe he didn't feel the same way. Maybe he felt like he could have beat him out, or this freshman would end up getting hurt. I don't know. I don't know what his motivation was to stay, but Saban had him stay. I mean, having an opportunity to win another national title is there, but if you're winning a national title from the bench versus playing, it does make a difference. It does. So, you can't necessarily say that that it helps him out from his draft stock if in fact he wants to go to the NFL. Being the number 2 at Alabama isn't necessarily the best spot for him.
And who knows? Maybe he's got a girlfriend at Alabama. Maybe he's got stuff going on. Maybe he just wants to stay there. I didn't want to leave school. I was at Virginia Tech for 5.5 years. I got a graduate degree, the whole deal. I loved it. So maybe Jalen Hurts just likes being there. And his options, as we talked about, are a little bit broader than Kelly Bryant. So, okay, so he just stays. And he's still playing. He's still part of the team. And I'm not sure the kid's an NFL quarterback anyway. So, we'll have to see about that. But that's such a unique situation because how many college teams have one great quarterback, much less two? And Clemson and Alabama are in this unique situation. They both have really good quarterbacks. I mean, they've got two.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it's kind of almost unprecedented that a program would have that many really good quarterbacks on their roster. Now, Miami did back in the day. Back in the 80s, they had that run, but they didn't have more than one on the roster at the time. They just kind of had a sequential, Kelly, Testaverde, Kosar, those guys. Okay. But, when you look at the talent that Alabama has, I mean, oh my gosh, those guys are ridiculous. Clemson a little bit less, but the freshman Lawrence, have you seen him play? Oh my gosh, that kid can sling it. I mean, he's like Patrick Mahomes back there. I mean, this kid has an arm, and listen, I really want to see a Clemson Alabama national championship game because I want to watch, those two quarterbacks go at it. Those two defensive fronts. They've got the best two defensive fronts in the country, and it would be a battle. And I'm putting Notre Dame number 3. Notre Dame is impressive. I mean, I think we dismissed Notre Dame because of their past struggles, but that's a good football team, and their schedule's as hard as anybody else's has so far this season. They beat some really good football teams. I mean, we kind of dismissed the opening weekend against Michigan, but look what Michigan's doing. And you go, well, Michigan wasn't playing that. But Notre Dame beat them. Now, Michigan had a chance at the end, but still, I'd have to put my top 4 teams, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan. That's my top 4. But
I mean,
I've been wrong in the past. But
Alabama, I think you do Alabama 1, and it doesn't matter if it's LSU, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame. For me, it's just kind of Michigan. They're kind of all right there. When I can, again, with Big Ten teams, it's really tough because Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, they all play each other at the end of the year. And it just really kind of, who can survive the gauntlet and avoid having a second loss? See, Ohio State's issue the last 2 years has been losing to teams It shouldn't. It shouldn't be losing to out of the West.
Right.
Losing to West teams, it shouldn't. Losing to Purdue this year and losing to Iowa last year in unceremonious fashions. Like, if they end up with one loss and you're trying to pick between them and Georgia with one loss to get in, that's such an unceremonious loss to lose to, a quality team. And again, Purdue's a quality team. Just because their record doesn't show it, it is a quality team. Good coach. It's such an unceremonious loss for them that, again, that Iowa game is what kept them out last year. Really is what did it for them. Really did them in.
Well, if Ohio State runs the table from here on out, I think they're going to get in because they'll knock Michigan out, right?
Yeah,
and they'll knock Penn State out. Yeah, but I don't think anybody's expecting Ohio State to run the table because I don't think their defense is very good. It's not playing very well. Now, it's good. It's a good defense. They're just not playing very well. But if they step it up and if they listen, whichever Big Ten team runs the table from here on out, and I'm not sure one will, and that's the problem the Big Ten has is they may knock each other out. I mean, you may end up with 3 2-loss teams in the top of the Big Ten, and they're going to be left out, right?
That could be very likely.
In the playoff.
I just want to stop for a second to welcome.
I think.
I just want to stop for a second to welcome everybody in on Facebook Live for tuning in here on the overtime segment. Thank you much for tuning in. For those of you who have hung on to listen over on the Spreaker app, if you don't have the Spreaker app, please take some time. Go to your Play Store, or Apple Store, Apple Cart, whatever the heck they call it, wherever you get apps. Download the free app. Spreaker, that's Spreker, Spreaker.com or Spreaker app. You can listen to the full show over there and the podcast version as well. Be sure to follow us there. But I see there's quite a few people already tuning in over on the Facebook Live. Yeah. But finish what you were saying, Kevin.
Well, I mean, we talked about, I think, in the preseason show that the Big Ten is so stacked. Of course, at the time, we thought Wisconsin was going to be, way better than they are. But, you've got Michigan, and Michigan State has lost a couple times, so they're kind of out of the running there. But Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa, now Purdue is playing a spoiler role. We could very well see a 2-loss team win the Big Ten championship. I mean, I think it's very possible that could happen. I mean, Michigan could lose. Ohio State could lose again. Let's say this scenario. Michigan plays Penn State this week, right? So
yeah.
Let's say Michigan beats Penn State. Penn State has 2 losses. They're done. Then Ohio State beats but then Michigan beats Ohio State. Ohio State has 2 losses, but Michigan stubs their toe somewhere along the way and loses. Or let's say Michigan loses to Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. They've all got 2 losses. I mean, that's a scenario that isn't outside the realm of possibility because they're all good football teams. And so, I happen to think right now, though, that I think Michigan is going to run the table. I think Harbaugh has that team where he wants it. The defense is playing at an incredibly high level. Their quarterback, they finally got a quarterback that is at least pretty good. And that's a tough team. And Ohio State is undisciplined. I think Urban Meyer lost that team. All the turmoil at the beginning of the season, you cannot diminish that. All that stuff with the Zach Smith thing and the suspension of Urban Meyer and all that. You saw a team, the fourth quarter against Purdue, that team gave up. That team quit on Urban Meyer. It just did. It didn't play. You've got Nick Bosa that says, I'm not going to play anymore. I'm going to go to the NFL. He bailed on his teammates. He was a captain. I'm not saying he did the wrong thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying at all. I'm just saying that all of the turmoil at Ohio State, and these are 20-year-old kids.
With Nick Bosa,
they don't handle adversity like
Nick Bosa wasn't even necessarily going to be available the rest of the season anyways.
Probably not. I mean, at least not till probably the Big Ten championship game, if that, right? So I get that.
They would say playoffs. That's what they were saying, playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not editorializing his decision. I'm just saying that it casts some more turmoil into a situation that was still tumultuous. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. And so all of that, Urban Meyer doesn't look happy. He doesn't look like he's enjoying himself anymore. And so, and they always lose to somebody they're not supposed to lose to, and they could lose another one. I mean, Michigan, Harbaugh, their one loss is to Notre Dame, who's now fourth in the rankings, undefeated. That's a quality loss. I mean,
and it's the first game of the season.
I mean,
they have 8
months
to prepare for Michigan.
They lost by 6 points. Was it 23-17?
Yeah,
something like that. So, I mean, this is a really good football team, and so I don't expect Ohio State to run the table. I expect Michigan to take care of Penn State this week. But if Penn State beats Michigan, then all bets are then it's chaos in the Big Ten. In the Big Ten, was the East or whatever the division is. Yeah, it's kind of chaos.
There's a lot of room, right? As we know. There's a lot of room for shakeup, especially in this top 10. Georgia, Auburn, Auburn being really the only team that they have their competition left on the schedule. Georgia Tech, maybe. I highly doubt that Georgia Tech's going to do much there. So I think Georgia is pretty safe with one win going into the conference championship. Probably against, again, even if Alabama has one loss, Alabama gets in. Because LSU's loss is on the other side of the conference. So if LSU, in theory, if LSU beats Alabama and wins out, again, Alabama gets in probably with another week bye, a 1 week bye, which we seen is basically detrimental for every team in the college football playoffs because you're giving Nick Saban basically just like it was last year. Before they played in that game, before they played in that playoff game, the last game that they had played was the Iron Bowl. They basically had over a month off.
Right.
They had like 34 days off.
And it's 6 weeks.
Yeah,
6 weeks.
They didn't have to play in a conference championship
game.
Exactly. So, again, it could play into their favor. LSU still has Alabama, and they have Texas A&M. Neither of those are going to be walks in the park. They could end up losing both of those games. So, just as a top 10, looking at the top 10, LSU could just be out of it in the next 4 weeks, just like that. Just like that. Michigan, again, like you were saying, it's like... as bipolar as Northwestern is, Northwestern could pick up a win this weekend against Notre Dame because Notre Dame hasn't been as solid. Again, yeah, they've scheduled solid competition and they haven't lost yet. But it's not like they've been that dominant either. Michigan has.
So you mentioned. Okay, you mentioned the wild card. So the difference this year. If Notre Dame goes unbeaten, which I think they have, ESPN I think has like a 73% chance of going unbeaten. Okay, if they go unbeaten, no conference will have two teams in the tournament this year. There's no way it happens. So that's the wild card that we haven't had before, and this is the reason I think we need to go to 6 teams.
But if they do go undefeated,
if Notre Dame wins,
they would deserve it because that means
they're in.
They got Northwestern.
They've got to be in.
Who's right? Leading the West? They're 5-1 in conference, 5-3 altogether.
Yeah.
They're just outside of the top 25.
And if Michigan wins out, Notre Dame will have beaten the Big Ten East champion.
Northwestern is just the luckiest terrible team out there. They're a lucky terrible team because they're not convincingly. They're Iowa. That's what they are. They're Iowa this year. They are Iowa. That's usually Iowa, but they've pulled that off.
And because of the schedule, Notre Dame will probably have beaten one of the champions of the ACC division, whether it's the Coastal or Atlantic. Because they will have beaten and if Stanford somehow wins the West, which they still can in the Pac-12. I mean Notre Dame potentially could have beaten 3 or 4 division champions, right? I mean, potentially they can. They could have. And so you can't leave them out. And in fact, if that happens, they're probably going to be. I mean, there has to be third, right? Probably play Clemson in the semifinal. But that leaves out 3 conferences, 2 or 3 conferences, and it's chaos. And who's worthy? Because the Pac-12 is kind of a train wreck. I mean, Washington State, but they have a loss. And they still have to play Washington, and I think they still have to play Cal. I mean, they've got a tough road over there, even though they beat Oregon last week. But they've got a tough road. There's nobody in the South that's any good in the Pac-12. I think Utah has a loss, and Colorado's had a good start, but they've struggled. UCLA, USC, Arizona State are train wrecks. Arizona State and Arizona and UCLA with all first-year head coaches. So what that leaves us then is, what happens in the Big 12? Texas just stubbed their toe miserably. They looked horrible this past week against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has 3 losses, so they're not getting in. Texas now has 2 losses. Oklahoma has 1 loss, but they lost to Texas.
Okay, but
so
Oklahoma
they lost the tiebreaker.
Oklahoma has Texas Tech, who beat Oklahoma State. They have Oklahoma State. They have Kansas, who feels like they can do something now. Their chest is kind of puffed up this year because they just want to play spoiler to everybody. And then they end the season with West Virginia at West Virginia.
And we're forgetting about West Virginia, by the way.
What's that?
They're a good football team.
They have 1 loss.
We're forgetting about West Virginia, by the way.
West Virginia has
they have one loss.
They're
a good
like
football team.
13th.
And they've got
13th.
a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, and by the way, if you go back, how many – is this the 5th year? This is the 5th year of the playoffs, right? It's the 5th year.
Mm-hmm.
At least one team has gotten in the playoffs every year that was outside the top 10 in the first ranking. So who's that going to be this year? It could be West Virginia. Could be. Right? Could be.
That's a long shot.
Every year, somebody's come from.
That's a very.
But every year, there's been a long shot.
That's a really big long
because
shot.
Their schedule's back-ended.
Yeah, because they got Texas.
Because their schedule's back-ended.
Texas Christian, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma. That's their last 4 games.
Yeah. They played 4 of the top half the leg. Yes, they did. But it has happened every year, right? I'm just saying. I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm just saying that it has happened every year, and they're a good candidate because if they do run the table, that's a pretty impressive, and they'll probably have to play. They'll probably end up playing Texas in the championship game because their loss is to Texas, right?
Yep.
Isn't West Virginia's loss to Texas, right? So it'd probably be a rematch to Texas because Texas has the tiebreaker over Oklahoma. Oklahoma State has already lost a couple times in the conference, so they're not. So if Texas wins out in the conference, I think Texas's schedule was front loaded. If Texas wins out and West Virginia wins out, it would be West Virginia and Texas in the Big 12 championship game, which would then add more credence to West Virginia's resume if they can win it. But, this is what's fun about college football right now. There's all these scenarios. Who knows? This may be the first year we get a 2-loss team, in it.
I don't see.
It could happen.
I really. They were saying what's more likely, having 2 undefeated teams in it or a 2-loss team, and I think. I do think a 2-loss team is more likely because I'm not sure if Notre Dame gets by Northwestern and Syracuse, particularly Syracuse.
Is that game at Syracuse? Is that game in the Carrier Dome?
Let me double check.
Because Syracuse is a whole different team in the Carrier Dome than they are everywhere else.
Yeah, and I know Notre
Dame. I think they bring a different team in there. I think they literally
goes to Chicago for that game.
Yeah. Oh, that's in Soldier Field.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't.
Well, that's a home game for Notre Dame.
Hold on a second.
That's a home game for Notre Dame.
It is.
I
don't know if it's at Soldier Field.
No, it's in Yankee Stadium. It's at Soldier Field. Okay. Well, that's a home game for Notre Dame's going to win that.
No, it's at Ryan Field. It's in Evanston. It's just outside Chicago. I just said Chicago. I couldn't remember Evanston. Shoot me.
Well, no, you're talking about Northwestern.
Yeah, Northwestern.
Where's the Syracuse game?
I know, that's what I was.
Yeah, where's the Notre Dame Syracuse game? Where's that?
Syracuse is at South Bend. It's in South Bend.
Yeah, okay. So Syracuse ain't going to win that game.
That's
Syracuse
Yankee Stadium. No, it is Yankee Stadium.
It's Yankee Stadium. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's considered.
That's different.
It's considered a home game for Notre Dame.
Yeah, because they
have more fans.
They like to move the games around and get
Yeah, they have more fans.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
They can pull a nice sellout crowd at Yankee Stadium versus making somebody come to South Bend, Indiana.
Oh yeah. But so if that game was at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, whole different deal. But so I happen to disagree. I think there's more likely to be 2 unbeaten teams because you've got Notre Dame in the mix. Just Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame. If you look at those schedules right now, there's a really good chance that 2 of those guys go undefeated.
So right now, wouldn't Virginia be playing Clemson? I think Virginia is number 1 in the Coastal.
Are they undefeated?
They're not undefeated
in the conference.
They're undefeated in the conference. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I'm
okay.
gonna reel that back in real quick. I think again. They're 1 defeat. They're 4-1 in conference. Virginia Tech is 3-1. So your Hokies, although they have poo-pooed on themselves, they are still 4-3, 3-1 in conference.
Right.
And they
still control their own destiny.
Yeah, Boston College,
and still control their own destiny.
Miami, and they end with Virginia. I don't think Virginia has really,
and so
Virginia hasn't really. I'm gonna just check their schedule real quick. They
haven't played anybody.
They haven't. They beat Duke and Miami. Miami by a field goal, and Duke by a couple of touchdowns. But yeah, no. Yeah. They may not.
And they
get by
beat Wake Forest, I think.
Did they? No, they didn't play Wake Forest. They didn't play Wake Forest.
No.
They lost by a couple touchdowns to North Carolina State. They bombed on Louisville, which everybody did.
They beat Louisville. That's what it was.
They lost to Indiana.
Yeah, they beat
the Hoosiers.
They beat Louisville, Miami, Duke, and UNC. So they've been kind of bottom feeders so far. Okay,
yeah, the
combined record of the AC teams that they've beaten is really bad, right? They have like 1 win between them all.
They have this week they play.
Yeah,
Pitt.
they've beaten.
And then they're going to host the Fighting Turner Gills. Fighting Turner Gills out of Liberty. It's a little fact people probably didn't know there. Turner Gill is coaching Liberty, the Flames, a.k.a. the Fighting Turner Gills.
Yes, the Liberty Flames. So Virginia, even though they're 4-1, have been fairly untested because Louisville's 0-5, Duke's 1-3, UNC's 1-4,
and they're ranked 25th. The committee are they serious? Yeah. See, you take Jeff Long off the committee, and this is what happens.
Condoleezza Rice off the committee. The man Frank Beamer is on the committee, though, former Virginia Tech coach. So, we've got some good guys. Now, actually, yeah, and the bottom of the rankings don't really matter much. I mean, it's like I don't know why they go that far down. I mean, why not just stop at like 8? You know what I mean? It's like who cares?
Top 10. Top 10. Like, really beyond
10, maybe
at the 12 point?
I could see going to 16 because I can see going to 16 because that gets you the 8 major bowls that they slot teams into, you know.
Yeah.
So I can see going to 15 or 16, but 25, who cares? I mean, there's too much left in the season. But my Hokies, Virginia Tech, with 25 consecutive bowl appearances, that's in jeopardy this year for sure, because they still have
Virginia,
Boston College, Virginia, Pittsburgh, and Miami left on their schedule. So they've got.
I understand when you lose to Old Dominion, everything's up in the air. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a young defensive backfield, and he kicked the best pass rusher off the team because he was undisciplined. Yeah, this is going to be a struggle down the stretch for the Hokies. We've got to get 2 or 3 wins. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but of course we've beaten Virginia 14 years in a row, so maybe we're thinking that's just going to happen. But I don't know.
Said about Old
Boston
Dominion.
College, we usually have their number, but BC's really good. So
you give Old Dominion a home game, they get so excited. They were juiced.
Yeah. Well, they had a pretty good quarterback and a really big receiver that took advantage of a young defensive backfield, and that's what happened against Georgia Tech this past week. Again, is once the Georgia Tech triple option got to the corner, the young defensive backs just didn't know how to react. They hadn't played that deep. They hadn't played that offense before. They're all young, so we'll see. Boston College this Saturday is going to be a struggle for the Hokies. So, but this year, Clemson's going to have no problem winning the AC championship. None at all.
Yeah. Whoever
the Coastal puts in front of them in Charlotte on December 3rd or whatever it is, they don't have a prayer against Clemson. They just don't. There's just not a good enough football team in that side of the league right now. It's very balanced. There's still 4 teams that can win it. But it's just not. They don't have a really strong team in the other half of the league. And it's kind of like, it's a little bit like the Big Ten. Whoever wins the Big Ten East is going to win that conference. Because they're just better football teams. Northwestern's got a good run, but Wisconsin's not who we thought they were. Iowa's a little bit inconsistent. But I think Michigan's the class of the Big Ten right now. But that this weekend's going to go a long way in either going to clarify things or it's going to create more chaos. So if Penn State beats Michigan, all bets are off in the Big Ten, right? If Michigan beats Penn State, then you have some sense of order. If Alabama beats LSU, it's over. it's over in the SEC West, as far as I think.
Well, pretty much.
But if LSU, and if Kentucky beats Georgia, that creates all sorts of.
But here's the thing: is if Alabama beats Georgia, Georgia still has a case to get into the national championship game. If Notre Dame has one loss, I think 2-loss Georgia gets in over 1-loss.
Yeah.
Notre Dame.
I would agree. Yeah, I'd agree. But Georgia has to navigate their way all the way. No, Georgia has to win out and then lose to Alabama. But Georgia still has to win the East. If they lose to Kentucky, that's right.
Yeah, Kentucky. I mean, contender, pretender, Kentucky. I guess it really comes to, I don't know. It's still a team in question. We've seen them do. I just don't think people really have confidence in Kentucky yet because there's nothing really that they've done over history to give them confidence.
Why would you? I mean,
exactly.
Right.
But hey, we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to get your take on the Browns situation. They fire both Hugh Jackson today and Haley, offensive coordinator. What do you make of this? And then they want somebody that communicates well, but then they put in Greg Williams, who yells at everybody. As they want to be an offensive team, but they install a defensive coordinator as a head coach. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, but what's your take of this? It's typical Browns, but what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, it's the Browns. Okay, so there's not much logic. I think, and I didn't watch Hard Knocks. I don't know if you watched it, but
I did.
Apparently, there was a lot of discord in that coaching staff that made its way into Hard Knocks. Okay, and so
that's fair to say.
Haley and Hugh Jackson didn't see eye to eye at all, and the strength of that team right now, outside of Baker Mayfield, is their defense, which has some really quality athletes on it. And they've got a good general manager now. My take is that ownership just, of course, let's go back 10 months. They should have fired the guys. They should have fired the guy. I mean, he went 1-31. Who keeps their job after going 1-31 in the NFL? I mean, no one does.
Hugh Jackson.
And so, 1-31, and they kept him on.
Hugh Jackson. It's not even like it wasn't even like mediocrity, because then you could say, oh, he won some football games. But in 40 games, he won 3?
Yes. Yeah, it's like
he actually got the marble to spin around and land on the double zeros once too. He got a tie. How do you land in the green? I mean, he managed in 40 games to land in the. It's like he was playing roulette and sucked. He landed in the green once.
And by the way, they could easily be 5-2 right now. I mean,
with a better field goal kicker,
they had winnable games.
Yeah, with a better field goal kicker.
Yeah. I mean, they could be 5-2, and so I think ownership just kind of went, gosh. Not only did we go 1-31, but now I got you some players. I spent some money.
Well, I think that
turn a 5
they're not. They didn't have confidence in the coaching staff, and I think that there's some good options open. I keep hearing Matt Campbell from Iowa State. He just got signed to a big contract. I don't see them taking him. He turned down some other gigs last year. Why go to the Browns?
No, John Dorsey is not going to bring in the GM at Cleveland. Is not going to bring in a college coach. he's going to bring in an established NFL guy because John Dorsey's an NFL guy. And I think he's going to bring in – now, I heard today, I was listening to Dan Patrick's show. Dan Patrick was circulating an idea that Mike McCarthy will probably be out after the season at the Packers because the Packers might not make the playoffs. Dorsey spent the last 24 years at the Packers, and he has a good relationship with McCarthy, and so they might hire McCarthy at the end of the season. That makes a lot of sense because McCarthy's an offensive-minded guy. He and Rodgers don't get along, blah, 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 blah. So there's that possibility. They're all looking for the next Sean McVay, of course, the quarterback whisperer kind of guy. But who knows? Because the Browns haven't made a single decent front office decision since they came back in the league in 2000. So, 2002, whatever it was. Why would we expect them to do it now?
Here's the thing. Here's my take.
We'll see. But you have Dorsey.
I would say I want to go ahead and I want to share my top 3 head coaching options right now. One, I could definitely see because his familiarity with the Green Bay Packers, Mike McCarthy would definitely be on that short list. Also, I think that Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator in Kansas City, I think he is he's obviously doing a good job there. Another guy under Andy Reid. Those guys seem to work out really well. So, and he's good talent.
Yeah, that whole coaching tree. Yeah. And McCarthy's on that tree. McCarthy's on that tree, right? Yeah. McCarthy's on that tree.
Yep, McCarthy's on that tree. And then John DeFilippo. He's the offensive coordinator for the Eagles.
Yep.
So I think he's done really well.
That guy's on the short list. Yeah.
Again, Peterson was one of those guys on the tree. He's done really well. So I see those are probably the short list. If I had to say, if you had to hold me down and say pick three head coaches you think that they're going to pick next, if I was Dorsey, those would be the guys on my short list right now. I don't think,
and of course,
Matt Campbell,
Eric Bieniemy had. Right now, Eric Bieniemy had it might have been the best nickname ever by Chris Berman. Eric sleeping with Bieniemy. That's probably the best nickname he ever had. Okay, it was absolutely up there, and because remember he had all the nicknames for these players, but Eric sleeping with Bieniemy had to be because it was right when that movie came out, Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts. I got to throw that in there because that was one of the greatest ever by Chris Berman. But yeah, I mean, those are you're going to want to get an offensive-minded coach. Because Greg Williams is not going to take over that team. No. He's a train wreck. I'm surprised they didn't fire him too. Although the defense has been playing pretty well, so that's probably why. But he's not, and he probably won't be there after this year anyway. I don't know if anybody's going to keep him on. He was the guy in Bounty Gate, and he's been around the league for a long time, and he's had some really good success with the Redskins and the Saints and some others. But yeah, I can't argue with those because you're looking for offensive guys. I mean, and you want to. I mean, Kansas City, you cannot argue with the creativity of their offense. I mean, it is a machine. I mean, when you watch that offense, and with Patrick Mahomes and that arm he has, oh my gosh, that's just ridiculous. And Mayfield's a good quarterback. I'm not sure he's quite as good as Mahomes, but he's pretty good.
No, he's not.
No. He's probably more mobile.
You know what? Mahomes. See, the thing is, Mahomes is very mobile and very accurate, but he's very controlled in his chaotic moments. And I think him being more controlled or under control in his chaotic moments is what sets him apart. Because right now, biggest thing I see with Baker Mayfield is when he gets under pressure, when he has to do, he's pushed to do more, he's struggling right now. But everything that is lined up, set out, scripted out, he's running through those. But if he's under duress or under pressure or asked to do something more complex from the playbook, he's not. It's falling apart. It's not. He looks very he didn't
green. He didn't have the luxury of sitting. He didn't have the luxury of sitting behind Alex Smith for a year.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, Patrick Mahomes is like a combination of Brett Favre and Russell Wilson. I'm telling you, the kid is special. I mean, it's incredible. And he's my fantasy quarterback, by the way. He's on my team. I've got Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes as my quarterbacks in fantasy. Now, how good a draft was that? That's pretty good. I'm the highest scoring team in my league, and I'm only 3-5 because I've had some bad luck. But anyway, I'm just venting now.
What'd you do? Did you draft one of the
good.
Bucs running backs? Is that the mistake you made? Did you know Tampa Bay?
I've scored lots of points. It's just
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Out of the 4 running backs they have on the roster, their starting running back didn't get a touchdown on the season until this last week, and still, I'm telling you, he has like 374 yards on the season. On the season.
Yeah.
I think Adrian Peterson in his like 500 seasons, was he on 50 seasons or something? Had that the last 2 games. By the way, Adrian Peterson was a great pickup for your Skins.
I've got Peterson too on my team. I've got a great team. I also have Gordon from the Chargers. I mean, I've got a great team.
You've been one of those waiver wire bandits, haven't you?
Yes, I pick a different guy every week. Yeah. But no, I drafted all those guys.
That's crazy.
I drafted Mahomes,
every
Watson,
every
AP,
league I've ever won, and I've won a few of them.
Gordon.
It's all off what you get off waiver wire. It's just being on top of the wire.
Yeah, I've only got like. I only have 5 players left that I drafted out of the 16 on our team. Something. I've only got 5 guys left that I drafted, and I have to bench one every week because I picked up Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. So I can only play one of them. But anyway. So who do you like? I mean, there's got to be an upset this week. Alabama go down? Does Michigan go down? Who goes down?
Notre Dame.
So you're going with Northwestern. You're going with the Wildcats.
It's like that. They're the like, who do you fear in a fight more?
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Are you still there? Okay, who would you fear? I'll finish this here with, even though we're cut off on the other side. Who do you fear more? Is it somebody that looks like they can fight, or somebody that looks like they're freaking crazy? Like, I would fear the crazy person more, because you don't know what they're going to do. They might be hiding something in somewhere, and you never know. The person that fights, you're like, oh, they look like they can fight. You can kind of expect that, hey, they can probably fight, so they'll probably do some stuff that people that can fight would do. So you have a kind of expectation. With crazy people, you don't have, I mean, it's like I say, You're going to fight 50 Cent or you're going to fight Kanye? I mean, just saying, like 50, you clearly tell the dude fights. By the way, he did fight. He did box, amateur box. But you could kind of expect the guy's going to try to throw punches and stuff like Kanye. You don't know what Kanye's going to... Kanye doesn't know what he's going to do. He may just stand there in Vogue in a mega hat. I'm just saying, you don't know. I think it's a legitimate argument. I would say, to answer Kevin's question, I would say the upset of the week would be Northwestern over Notre Dame. The homer pick would be Nebraska over Ohio State, which could happen. I'm not confident to predict that it will, but it could happen. So, but that pretty much wraps up the show for tonight. I appreciate all of you tuning in on for Block Talk, who don't even get to hear this sign off. Those of you that tune in over on Spreaker and over on Facebook Live. I saw a whole bunch of you ran over there. Very interactive tonight over on Facebook. I appreciate it. We'll keep adding this in each week. Adding some new stuff to the set here. So if you guys I have some gifts that have been coming in. I'll put them up in as I get them. So appreciate those who send the sports memorabilia or gifts. Put them up here. So, but that does it for me tonight here on the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. Yes, this was the 273rd show of the Cold Hard Truth on Sports weekly show. So, been doing it for a while, and we're going to keep it going. So tune in next week again, 9 p.m. to midnight every Tuesday night. You can hear the whole show. Just go to the Spreaker, download the Spreaker app, SPREAKER. Listen to the full show, and the last hour, 45 minutes or so, is always available here on the Facebook Live. Some of you may be watching this over on YouTube. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Subscribe. We'll continue putting these over there as they come along. So, appreciate you all for tuning in. That's all for me this week. Be safe. Have a happy Halloween. And don't eat too much candy, I guess. Be safe. I'm out.